Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Monday, October 7th, 2024, and today we are going to be talking about Kamala Harris and Donald Trump on the national level when it comes down to the issue of the economy. Issues like inflation, like job security, things that revolve in and around the United States economy, and what the future might look like for first-time home buyers, what the future might look like for people who are in their mid-careers, people that have been spending a lot of time in and out of the workforce, and a lot of people who are graduating college or graduating high school and entering directly into the workforce. The economy is this all-encompassing term where Democrats historically have done very poorly on in regards to the Republican Party, even dating back to elections prior to Donald Trump, such as 2012. Mitt Romney consistently outperformed Barack Obama when it came down to voters deciding a preference as to who they believed would be better for them on the issue of the economy. And what we've learned in elections is that it actually isn't always just the economy that benefits the Republican Party. There are a variety of different issues that have led to Republican victories in the past that exist and extend beyond just this all-encompassing issue of the economy. But the argument from the Donald Trump team for the past, 3 years now has been that Donald Trump was better for the American economy. Donald Trump is the person who, can lower inflation, that prices in 2019 were better than prices in 2023. And while when you're looking at it from that standpoint, Donald Trump's messaging seemed to be very simple. Were you better off 4 years ago than you are today? But that line of messaging really doesn't work when we were at the height of a global pandemic and we couldn't find toilet paper at grocery stores and the economy was in fact at a worse point 4 years ago today than it was now, or even a year ago, or 2 years ago. And that really does matter. And Kamala Harris for a while, and Joe Biden largely faced this problem, was lagging behind when it came down to issues like the economy. She has made major gains on this topic in a way that really has boosted her standing on economic issues in a variety of different ways. The thing that really caught my attention to this was this brand new poll from INI and TIPP. They do really strong polls back in 2020. They did a poll that was quite accurate. In fact, one of the most accurate pollsters back in that election cycle. Now, you can definitely tell from the way that some of these issues are written and the way they are discussed that there is a certain political leaning. At the end of the day, it was the most accurate pollster in 2020 when it came down to the national head-to-head, and it shows Kamala Harris underperforming Joe Biden by just 1 point nationwide. But what's more interesting, too, is that when it comes down to the nitty-gritty and why voters are backing Harris, why voters are backing Trump, the economy no longer stands to be an issue that Donald Trump routinely wins on like he used to a year ago or even 6, 5, 4 months ago. And you can see it on an issue-by-issue basis. When they ask voters who they believe would be better on the following issues, Donald Trump very clearly has an advantage when it comes down to securing the border. That's something that really does matter to a lot of voters, and Donald Trump holds that advantage. But beyond that, it really starts to narrow down. The only real areas where Donald Trump does better: improving national security, implementing a strong foreign policy. This one is largely led by Democrats who see the ongoing conflict in Israel and Palestine as a failure on the side of the Democratic administration. But beyond that point, right, that's still just a 3-point advantage for Trump in terms of the overall net. The largest here is securing the border. The largest for Republicans historically have been, sure, in some cases immigration, but almost overwhelmingly on the issue of the economy. The standard convention has been since 2016 and even in 2020 that Donald Trump would be better for the economy. Joe Biden spent hundreds of millions of dollars combating the narrative that Donald Trump was better for the economy in uplifting all of the economic crises that we saw in 2020 and making them known and relevant to the American public, which is why Donald Trump started to see decreases in support on the issue of the economy, decreases in approval on topics like the economy and inflation and job security and all of these different things and housing security, all of these different things that Kamala Harris now is neck and neck with Donald Trump at, and you can see it here. On the issue of growing the economy, Donald Trump, again, historically would do really well against Hillary Clinton, really well in the early stages of 2020 against Joe Biden. He is now neck and neck, literally tied, on the overall net here, 0-point difference between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Slight advantage, but rounded together, it goes down to a 0-point net lead for 0 of the candidates here. So 49-48, this is neck and neck. Fixing inflation is a big one. Donald Trump constantly talking about inflation when he visits the Rust Belt, visits the Sun Belt. He's always talking about it. He's neck and neck. Cutting spending, 45-45, right? These are the things that Donald Trump's campaign have really tried to argue they know how to do right. Ensuring energy security and energy independence. This is all J.D. Vance really tried to talk about on the VP debate stage. Kamala Harris has that advantage. On reducing taxes, this is a big one. The Republican Party is often known as the party that reduces taxes. In this circumstance, they're losing that by 3 points to Kamala Harris. And it doesn't just extend to one individual poll. You can see this in a lot a lot of different polls that actually dive deep into economic issues. The majority of them now do an issues by issues comparison of Trump versus Harris. For instance, Data for Progress. On the national scale, this is U.S. likely voters. On taxes on the middle class, Kamala Harris is trusted more by a net 9 points. Supporting small businesses, 10 points. Lowering housing costs, 5 points. Increasing wages, 5 points. Creating jobs, 1 point. Lowering grocery costs, 2 points. Protecting domestic manufacturing jobs, 1 point. Right? These are the things. And on the issue of inflation, she's down 1, but up 10 on small businesses, up 9 on taxes on middle-class Americans. Kamala Harris very clearly has turned around this issue of the economy that was a very bad point for Democrats, and has now put herself to be neck and neck and on par with performance of that of Donald Trump that Democrats historically have never really been able to tap into except in the 2020 presidential election. And it's because there's a lot of messaging that comes directly from some of the experts themselves. The Kamala Harris campaign has been very quick to uplift comments like these and articles like these, like the Goldman Sachs analysis that said the United States economy would fundamentally be better under Harris than Trump. That matters. When you see reputable firms coming out there and doing this economic analysis that we have seen conducted in previous elections, that we look to decide is a recession coming up, organizations and firms that we look to decide what's happening with the United States economy, when you find analysis that shows Kamala Harris better for the economy, it's moments like these and articles like these. The Kamala Harris campaign has been so unique and uplifting and expanding upon. Kamala Harris mentioned it herself multiple times in multiple rallies. This Goldman Sachs analysis. Why? Because Goldman Sachs is a name that many voters know and respect in terms of how it handles economic issues and understands them and projects them. And when they say Kamala Harris is doing better for the economy, voters listen. Because it isn't just that Kamala Harris is getting this boost on her own. You know, you're doing this because there's a combination of factors, because at face value, when you're looking at the economic plans of Harris versus Trump, and you're looking at it from that lens, from an analysis point of view, and she does better, that's something that's going to help. But a big boost on the issue of the economy has largely come from women voters. Ever since she became the Democratic nominee for president, or the presumptive, on July 22nd, 2024, we were at a position where voters across the United States really had to realign themselves. Were they now in for Kamala Harris, or were they still not voting, or were they still voting for Donald Trump? And we saw a considerable portion of the electorate actually shift away from Donald Trump after Kamala Harris became that nominee, right? You can see that on the day that Biden dropped out of the race, Donald Trump was at 48% nationwide. Today, he's down to 46.8%, what seems like a narrow reduction of just, 1.2%. It's still a reduction in a way that Biden and the Democrats went from 44.8% to 48.9%, nearly a 4.1% growth since the day he dropped out. Donald Trump losing overall support. The net here, very strong for Kamala Harris, a 5.2% net swing since she became the top of the ticket. And a lot of that has been driven by women voters across the United States who look to Kamala Harris as, someone who's a new figure. It wasn't just women, too. Minority voters really locked rank. All voters across the spectrum you saw shift ever so slightly or massively in favor of the Democratic ticket. And when Kamala Harris is able to really hone in on that messaging and that strategy that she offers as the Democratic nominee, you start to see that voters positively respond to that. When it comes down to topics like her own approval, you can see that in terms of how people view her, she is on the overall net nationwide, right? On the day that Biden dropped out of the race, you can see that her overall approval rating was down 15 points nationally. Just a week before Biden dropped out of the race, she hit her lowest point ever as vice president in terms of overall perception and approval nationwide. Today, she's approved of on the overall net by just around a point. Donald Trump, however, has not rebounded his reputation. Granted, it's better than where it was when he left office in 2021 after the January 6th insurrection, and a lot of the Republican Party was said and done with Donald Trump. Over time, it has narrowed, largely because that Republican disapproval had, in fact, gotten closer, gotten tighter, better for Donald Trump. He's still down 10 points nationwide. And the fundamental difference between the 2016 election and this one, because the Republican Party loves to bring up that 2016 election, is that Hillary Clinton was one of the most unpopular Democratic nominees in U.S. history. As the Democratic nominee, she was down 20-30 points in terms of overall net approval nationwide. 20 to 30 points. Donald Trump was down 10 to 20 points. At the end of the day, Donald Trump had a higher favorability than Hillary Clinton, believe it or not, had a better net than Hillary Clinton, believe it or not, And in the case of Joe Biden and Donald Trump, it looks a lot more similar to this election in terms of net approval. Joe Biden in the positive, Donald Trump in the negative. And that's why you're starting to see some different things happen here. Kamala Harris does better amongst voters nationwide in terms of perception, which means they are also much more willing to listen to her on issues like the economy. When she talks about it on the debate stage or when she just adds about it, they are more likely to believe her because they like her in a way that they do not like Donald Trump. And that is really going to make a difference when it comes down to some of these battleground states. The fact remains, if voters are split on the economy, Kamala Harris wins the election. Because the economy is not the issue the Democrats ever came into this election expecting to slam dunk. The issue they expected and are slam dunking is the issue of reproductive rights and a woman's right to choose to what to do with her body. Kamala Harris, you can see it yesterday. A podcast aired on Call Her Daddy, something that many young women across the United States listen to, many people in general across the United States listen to. It is clear the media strategy on issues like abortion is done very strongly. Going to areas and going to portions of the media markets, going to online digital strategy, doing all these things on topics like abortion because voters very positively responded to the Democratic Party's messaging on issues like abortion. You can see that when it came down to Senate races, in a lot of these states, when voters were asked, what were your top 3 issues? The economy was there. The economy was up there. Inflation was up there. Gas prices were up there. Do you remember in 2022 when everyone on the Donald Trump side put on those stickers on all the gas pumps that said, I did this, and it was Joe Biden pointing? That was the whole name of the game, supposedly, until the Dobbs decision. And Republicans ignored it. They said the Dobbs decision doesn't matter. Voters are going to vote with their pocketbooks, not with their considerations about women's reproductive freedoms. But they were wrong. They got demolished in the battleground states. The Senate races, Donald Trump lost, right? He was the one who handpicked people like Dr. Oz, Herschel Walker, Adam Laxalt, Blake Masters, all these Republicans who lost, Don Bolduc in New Hampshire, right? All these Republicans who lost the governor races too. Abortion was much more important in these races because the governors were directly responsible for issues like abortion and signing and vetoing abortion bans across the states. It resulted in Katie Hobbs, a Democrat who refused to debate, the Secretary of State who refused to debate Carrie Lake, who was down 4 points in the polls. She won on election night. It resulted in Laura Kelly winning in Kansas because of an abortion referendum that took place on the ballot, and Derek Schmidt took the unpopular opinion. He lost. In a state Donald Trump won by 15, Democrats won. Right in Maine, Paul LePage, the former Republican governor, ran, lost. Issues like abortion. So again, I don't want to get into the weeds of the 2022 midterms, but the point being that the Democratic Party already has a winning issue. And if these 30 days happen to change anything about these polls in favor of Kamala Harris, because she is neck and neck with Donald Trump, if she gets to a point where on election day, the majority of voters, or plurality of voters even, believe she has a better economic vision, believe that she is the person who can do better on issues like inflation and the economy at large, that will do a lot of damage to Donald Trump and his candidacy. Because this is the winning issue for Republicans going into this race. They do have securing the border and the southern border crisis and immigration. That is the one thing Republicans still are able to hold on to, the Democrats are not able to combat. But when it comes down to fundamental issues like reproductive freedoms and the economy, and the top 3 issues for voters could be securing the border, the economy, and abortion. If Democrats are winning 2 out of the 3, they win enough to win that election because voters will weigh their options accordingly, just as they did in 2022, just as they likely will in 2024. And so as I take a step back and reflect on a lot of this data, I really do see this as a fundamental problem for Republicans in this election and likely moving forward. Because if they cannot win on the issue of the economy, elections become tremendously more difficult. And this can likely explain why Kamala Harris still maintains her advantage in a state like Wisconsin, but has lost it in a state like Arizona. Because in Arizona, voters care a lot more about the southern border and securing it in comparison to voters in Wisconsin. The economy, jobs, manufacturing, all of these things that Kamala Harris now seems to be neck and neck, if not doing better than Donald Trump in, matters a lot in this state. And you can see it, that divide across the Rust Belt and across the Sun Belt is very, very real and rooted in differences on opinions of what matters the most to those voters. It just so happens to be that Kamala Harris's vision and her messaging and her strategy appeals the most to voters in Wisconsin, where she leads by 2, in Michigan, where she leads by 2, in Pennsylvania, where she leads by 1. Despite losing in some of these other swing states, some of these other Sunbelt states, you can see, for instance, North Carolina, Republicans +1, Georgia, Republicans +1, Arizona, Republicans +2. These areas that Democrats are not doing as well in, Kamala Harris in specific, is because, again, those issues that matter more to voters there, Republicans are starting to do better on that front. But when it comes down to the issue of the economy, inflation, wages, housing security, Kamala Harris now seems to be right on par with Donald Trump, breaking precedent from years past of elections where Democrats historically have been defeated quite tremendously on this topic of topic of the economy, where now she is giving Donald Trump, quite literally, a run for his money. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the top left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2024 presidential election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.